I think we're recording now.
Yes.
We are. Okay. So the task that I gave you all was to take a look at a strip like this, then call it a French fry, and say, like, how do we break this up into equal pieces without being able to measure with a ruler or without being able to fold it or things along those lines. And it's kind of a little bit confusing because we want to be able to try and think about actually what are the best possible ways to go about doing that and making sure that we have exactly equal pieces. You all came up with some really good ideas. You talked about kind of like drawing it out, kind of eyeballing it, and then making adjustments as needed, or cutting out a separate piece and kind of saying from there, well, I can kind of count up the number of those that it takes to kind of get to the whole and see if I'm close. And again, try it again if it doesn't end up working. And that's a really good strategy. So I have an example here where I did an eyeball. And it's not a great eyeball, but I kind of very quickly did that. And I broke up that French fry into 3 kind of equal pieces, close enough. And I did that to kind of get us to think about this idea of multiplicative reasoning. If I know that this piece here is 1/3 that I have here, then all I need to do is to duplicate it and make sure that there are 3 of them to get to the whole. So I take that piece, I duplicate, and then I duplicate it again. And then that way I know that I have the whole, and it doesn't matter if there are pieces that are given that aren't the same size. As long as I know what that unit fraction is, that 1/3, I know how to make all other versions of that fraction from there on out. Now, as you can see, the example that I have here isn't great. It's just eyeballed. And so how do we go about doing that? And in the book, or in the chapter that we looked at, it talked about this idea of the repeat strategy. And I just want to show you a little bit about what that can possibly look like. So again, let's think about if we're trying to do 1/3. I'm going to make it kind of obvious that I'm not going to, it's going to be too small for it to be 1/3. And so let's say that I say that this is the size piece, that I think that this is 1/3. Probably not going to cut it, right? So I take it and I try to duplicate that piece here. And then I try to duplicate that piece again. Did I make it? No. I have all of this left over. And so what can I do? If I need to be able to try and think about, well, how do I actually get to a much more accurate version of 1/3? And what the article that you all read talks about, the French fry article by Ron Sir, is that we can take this leftover piece and we can break that up into thirds. Okay. And now I have to go through and I have to start, and as they call it, the repeat strategy, I have to repeat this all over again. And I know that if I roughly take this piece here and add that much to it, I'm going to be that much closer to a 1/3. Does that make sense? And then I go through and I start with that as my unit rate. That is my unit fraction. And then I do it again. I say, can I make 3 of those get exactly to 1 whole? And if it's still too short again, I can break that last little piece up into much tinier thirds. Or if it gets too big, I can break that up into 2/3 and either add that new little amount or take off that new little amount off to be able to try and do that. And that is this idea of the repeat strategy that I have on slide 6. So what you end up doing is you kind of estimate what someone's share of the French fry is going to be. That's step number 1. And that's the unit fraction. That's that like 1/3 or the 1/7 or 1/11. And then you repeat it. You do that multiplicative moment you repeat it the number of total shares that you need. And you compare that to kind of your whole given French fry. Then you take a look at what's left over or what the overhang is, and then you have to adjust. You have to cut it up into that number of pieces again, and then add or subtract from your unit and go through the process again. And so if we go back to that slide on slide 3, right? I can take that little piece of French fry that's mentioned here, and I can line it up here and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of those little pieces equally make up that larger French fry. So that unit rate, that unit fraction there is 1/5. But if I didn't know that exactly what 1/5 was, I could take this tinier piece up here, one that I just make up, and measure it 5 times and realize I maybe get to like right there. And then realize I have a little bit of an overhang. And then I have to cut that up into 5 pieces and add that to our amount. And that's what the article talks about when we talk about the repeat strategy. What might be some questions that come up from that description that I just gave? Or does that seem pretty good? Does that make sense?